Well, welcome back to Citizen Development Live. I'm your host, Neil Miller. Today, our guest is Blake Jones. He's the product owner for low code and automation at a Fortune 100 company. Blake, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Neil. Good to be here.
It's great to have you here. You've got a very interesting position, interesting place to be from. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be in the position you're at now.
So I've been in this position over the low code and automation space for the last 4 years. Actually, almost tomorrow will be 4 years to the day, in fact. So it's kind of an interesting story. It wasn't a job or a position I went looking for. I was asked to come into this role and help set up kind of how we were going to be leveraging low code and automation and citizen development in the company. I will say, coming into the role, I was not sold on the whole idea.
Oh, nice.
I was a bit of a skeptic, and 4 years in, I safe to say my perspective has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit. What were some of the concerns and criticisms you had at the beginning?
Mostly about the capabilities of the low-code platforms I was familiar with at the time. To be honest, it was I think it was somewhat due to all the marketing hype, right?
Yeah.
Low-code automation, it was the next big thing. And from what I had seen at the time 4 years ago, the marketing didn't quite match the actual capabilities of the platforms that we had available.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, 4 years on, that has changed quite a bit. The industry continues to change, and everybody's, now they're all adding AI to everything. So the tools have come a long way. And it's also opened my eyes to all of the potential benefits of citizen development out there, right? All of the people that we have at our company with unmet business use cases that were never going to be addressed by a central IT group like the one I sit in,
Mm-hmm.
that now have the ability to use these tools to make meaningful impacts into how they do their jobs.
Yeah. Well, let's zoom out a little bit, talk about terminology. We've talked before. Why do you feel it's important to distinguish between this term low code and citizen development?
Yeah, there are two terms that get conflated often in discussions that I've been a part of. Obviously, low code is a platform; it's a tool, right? It's a language sort of analogy, for lack of a better way of thinking about it. But low code is the experience of building, or the ability to build solutions without having to dive right into the code,
Mm-hmm.
right? Hence the term. So low code is really the tool set, the platform, the experience, while citizen development is more about the persona. It's who's using the low code platform to build those solutions. Citizen developers traditionally means somebody who has not had formal training in software development, but sits somewhere in the business side of an organization and understands the problems, the workflows, the business processes, who can then use the low code platform to simplify, automate those processes. Obviously, with low code, it's not limited. Citizen developers are not the only ones using low code.
Mm.
Professional developers can, and in my opinion, should be using it as well, where appropriate, alongside their full stack development tools they're used to, in AWS and Azure and the other sort of cloud providers that are out there. I think that's another area where maybe the marketing has sort of created a bit of a misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we've been working through in our company as well. As professional developers hear low code and they think, oh, it's a kind of a cute toy, for non-developers to use. It can't really do that much. And so we've been trying to have those conversations and demonstrations and show them that, no, this actually is a very powerful tool, a very powerful platform that you can use to rapidly accelerate your own development alongside the more advanced full pro code stuff that you're building, separately.
Yeah. How do you all decide like what gets built on low code versus what gets built kind of with custom coding, or to say another way, like what do IT teams work on versus what citizen developers get to work on their own? Do you have a framework or a matrix or something to help you decide that?
So I'll start. The easy answer is, for the professional developers, we do not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Professional developers at our company, we sort of expect them to understand the tool sets that are available to them and make the best decision, whether that's a SQL server or a low-code database in whatever platform they choose to use. So for the professional developers, we really have less guidance. For the citizen developers, the options are fairly limited, which makes it easier. It's not like we have a proliferation of a dozen low-code platforms. We are largely a Power Platform shop.
Hmm.
Um, so it makes that decision or that conversation easier from a sit dev perspective because it's sort of, you can do Power Platform, you can do Python. Some of them will get into the old fashioned version 1.0 of low code citizen development that was Excel VBA, right?
Yeah,
Writing
yeah.
macros is still there as well. So we don't sit in our central organization and try to prescribe when people should use which technology. We're more focused on making them available for everybody to use.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the idea of Excel because to put it bluntly, I mean that was like the first citizen development tool out there. It was like you think like why would any random like non developer, non financial person need a spreadsheet? But it ended up being like a very powerful tool, and we kept squeezing as much as we could out of it. But it was essentially like a no code platform to start off with. Fast forward to the now, we're in 2024 recording this. How has that reliance on Excel and business users growing comfort with that? How has that been both an opportunity but also a blocker for process owners, non IT people to build their own tools?
Yeah, it's interesting. I often think to myself, I wonder what it was like when Excel was launched.
Yeah.
Whenever that was. What was the reception from IT organizations or whatever they looked like back then, and was it similar to the reception that citizen development has received more recently?
Hmm.
And like you said, Excel has been transformative in the business world as far as making people more efficient at their jobs, reducing human error, um, making them happier, I assume, at work. I mean, I would have had a terrible time if you put me at a drafting table with a big spreadsheet and a pencil.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
don't know how long I would have lasted. So, um, Excel has been transformative. Everybody has gotten used to it. Now it's just sort of a fact of life that at a major company you're going to have Excel or Google Sheets or whatever similar spreadsheet software you have. Um, and I would say that for better or for worse, that experience has bled over into now citizen development and low code because some of those scars that companies went through, maybe when Excel rolled out or even in the decades since, is sort of applied now to citizen development, right? So a very common discussion that I've had at our company with IT leaders is how do we prevent citizen development from becoming the next Excel?
Hmm.
And it's sort of asked in like a bad way, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in my mind, I'm like, if it's the next Excel, that's great because if you look at the step change we got going from paper spreadsheets to Excel, why don't we want to replicate that if possible? But to the blocker side, it has caused that concern. How do we, and if you think to Excel, how does IT or cybersecurity or anybody know that you've built an Excel workbook with a macro behind the scenes,
Yep.
right? How does anybody know that Neil built a workbook that is of critical importance to month-end close for the finance team?
Hmm.
How does anybody know that Neil has an access database that's sitting on a shared folder somewhere in the company network that anybody has access to that is storing salary data,
Yeah.
right? So all of these things, some people roll their eyes, but they've happened,
Yeah.
right? And it also happens, I'll say, on like SharePoint, um, which is another sort of citizen developer esque platform.
Yeah. Sure.
Uh, and so there's these concerns about how do we avoid that from happening again in the future or now with citizen development, with people who are excited and anxious and get out there and build things for their jobs, but maybe don't have security, design, architecture in mind when they do so.
Yeah. So, how have you guys been able to use something like Power Platform to overcome that? Because it is like a legitimate thing on some level. Like and I mean, an organization like yours, there are hundreds of thousands of Excel files out there that are, in some ways, running the business in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But like, you do want to know like which ones have these external connectors out of them, or which ones are holding sensitive data. So is there a way that these low code platforms are the answer, or are they just going to continue on with the same issues that were there before?
And that is where I've seen a lot of improvement over the 4 years that I've been in this job working with the low code platforms, right? And it's it's sometimes there's tension there, right,
Yeah.
between fully enabling citizen development and saying, here it is, you guys can use every capability of the platform. go make the world a better place, make your jobs better. And the tension there with, we have to make sure that it's done in a controlled and secure way.
Yeah.
And so that's really where I sit is my job is to try to find that balance, right? And so I often end up with one or both sides unhappy with me because of a compromise we've had to make.
Yeah.
um, but the good news is with these low code platforms is, from what I have seen, I won't say all of them, but I will say most of them have been making some really good investments in their governance and security capabilities from an administrative central standpoint, right?
Hmm.
So I sit in the central IT organization. I have the ability to turn on all of these control sets that I have on the platforms, so that I can say, hey, look, you can connect to um, Gmail, you can connect to Google Docs, you can connect to Dropbox. Oh, you can't connect to Twitter, you can't connect, or sorry, X. You can't connect to Reddit, right? So we
Yeah.
have the ability from the central governance perspective to control those endpoints you can connect to. We have telemetry around the apps and the workflows that are being built, so we can keep an inventory of those and who built them and where they live, which ones are being used and how much. So if there's an app that we see has 30,000 users a month, and oh, look, it was built by this guy named Neil.
Yeah.
We can go have a conversation with Neil and say, hey, what is this app? I mean, really good. We're happy. It's obviously providing value, but what is it? Is it something that maybe should be brought in-house, internal to IT, so that we can support it,
Hmm.
right? And it's not just Neil, because what happens if Neil leaves the company,
Right.
right? And Neil's app that had 30,000 users a month now breaks or stops working, or somebody has a question.
Hmm.
And so that is another one of the major concerns or major challenges we've had around citizen development, that I think oftentimes from the perspective of a sit dev, you don't think about that kind of stuff, right? I just want to build my app to do my job.
Yeah.
But those scars and that learning from an IT organization, sort of the experiences of the past, have colored how we approach that now today. And so I think trying to help citizen developers understand why we have those concerns
Hmm.
has been a challenge and an opportunity. And I think, 4 years on, we've done a pretty good job of that here where I'm at.
Yeah. Validate a couple numbers for me. And with a lot of people I talk to, we throw out the number 2 to 3% of your employee population is probably ready for a tool like this, and is in a position where they can use it. They want to make their own thing. They want to do that. Do you find like that number perhaps is close at where you're at, is of the people who like are capable of building? They can think, they can understand the things you're talking about. They can recognize the security risk, but they also still just want to make their own thing.
I wouldn't put it that low. I don't think we, we have thousands of citizen developers at our
Mhm.
company, right? I forget what our employee count. I think we're somewhere around 50,000. So it's not everybody,
Yeah.
right? But it's more than 2 or 3% for sure. Um, I wouldn't put it that low, and I think it's not so much that they don't understand the concerns. It's more just, when you're an engineer, you're focused on what you're trying to do. You're
Yeah.
not thinking about the downstream impacts or the other concerns, right? You just think, well, I wouldn't do that, so why do you care?
Yeah.
Well, that's valid, but I had a boss when I started here, and he would talk a lot about, we want people to fall into the pit of success. We want it to be easy for them to do the right thing. And so that's what we've invested a lot of time in, on myself and my team, is building out tools and guides and trainings and things, so that people can understand the right way that we want them to build stuff,
Hmm.
so that as soon as somebody has that idea, and we're a company full of engineers, as soon as somebody has an idea, they're able to go build that and build it in a way that it will meet our compliance requirements, our security requirements, and we can kind of smooth over those concerns and make it a nice, easy path for them to get that app published and used by others.
Yeah. It's great. You mentioned being a company of engineers. We've actually talked offline about the fact that there's some industries where citizen development tends to do really well, and some where it struggles a little bit more to take off. And one theory out there is that industries that have a lot of people from an engineering background who tend to think in this way, they're already kind of geared towards that. They already are thinking about things in terms of applications. Do you feel like that theory may have some weight in terms of why an industry that has more engineers would be more successful with citizen development?
I think it definitely does, and I think it especially does for newer hires, earlier career
Hmm.
engineers.
Yeah.
Talking with some of them, even non-engineers, right? Everybody in college these days, it feels like, is getting at least one or two software development adjacent kind of class, right?
Yep.
And so they come out having used similar tools in school and they want to use them now at work. Or they're an engineer and they're used to doing really complex, kind of processes in their brain. And now, oh, well, look, I can do this in a low code setting with formulas that are not, I don't have to learn the syntax of C sharp.
Yeah.
It's really easy. So I do think there's definitely merit to that hypothesis. And it's also interesting because a lot of the other companies that I talk to that have really leaned in on low code and citizen development are in the finance industry,
Hmm.
right? So banks and companies like that, where this is be an assumption on my part, but I assume a lot of them are really big Excel users,
Yeah.
right? And probably really powerful power users in Excel, probably written Excel macros. And so it's sort of a natural progression for them to come now into, oh, hey, look, I can now build a nicer looking app to replace my old spreadsheet, and it's more powerful, and I can connect to more data sources,
Yeah.
um, which is good because those are the kinds of people that you want, at least initially, to start off, in my opinion, on your citizen development journey. You don't want to force people to be citizen developers.
Mm.
And that's the conversation I've had with some as well is, well, how did you get people to be citizen developers? And my response is always, don't push somebody to be a citizen developer if they don't want to be. They will not be successful.
Yeah.
It takes that natural curiosity and that willingness to Google things and figure it out and fail and try again and invest some time and emotional, interest in your app to get started. And then once you get the first one done, we see it just snowball,
Yeah.
right? Everybody gets their first one done. They're like, well, now I see 20 other opportunities that I can improve with low code. And I think one of the most impactful things that I've heard at our company is we have a training program that we built. Actually, one of my colleagues built before she changed roles, and it's a 3 month long program where people come in with a project. They come in with an idea. They say, hey, this is our process. Right now, it's somebody sends us an email and it's got an attached PDF, and we have to open that up and we have to take these values and put them over here into Excel, and then
Yep.
usually they describe a process that makes my heart hurt because it's just so manual and so great. So they come in with that project, and then by the end, they've been trained on how do we manage data, what are the data concerns, how do you build an app, how do you deploy that into production, how do you manage security, all these kind of things we want them to worry about. And at the end, we ask them for feedback. And one of the best feedbacks we've gotten, in my opinion, was, and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have it memorized, I probably should, but essentially was, for years we've been hearing about digital transformation at the company and told that we need to be digitally transforming our work, and I never knew what that meant.
Mm.
Right, this is a non-IT person. This was a field operator. I never knew what that meant. Now, after the SIT-Dev program, I understand what digital transformation looks like, and I
Wow.
see so many opportunities for it. So that
Wow.
to me was like, that's like somebody gets it, after
Yeah.
that.
That's amazing, and it's a topic that in my role I have to look at a lot because we're always talking about positioning. We're talking about this idea of digital transformation, but when most companies and individuals hear that, they're thinking of, okay, this is our website, this is a customer portal, this is a customer app, some mobile function that they were trying to do for the external things, or it's something like deep ERP system that the IT team's working on. But
Yeah,
most of the time, that middle section, all the business functions, the internal operations, they get ignored. They're like, hey, you guys just keep using your spreadsheets, keep sending your emails. Here's Teams, here's Slack. Like it's better, right? But it's still like so manual, as you said. And there's so many
yeah,
opportunities in the middle. And just and I think you guys would attest to it too. It's like it's not you're not breaking the bank by trying to invest in this. It's not like some mega million type thing that you have to put in to see this kind of transformation, but it's really powerful.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it It can cost as much as you want, I will say. So there definitely is still like you need to do some evaluation, right, of how much you're going to invest in it. I have opinions about the ROI. It's a common conversation we have with our leaders is, what's the value we're getting for what we pay for
Mm,
low code. And so historically, what we've kind of done is we go back and we say, well, okay, here's our top 50 most used apps. Let's go talk to those people and ask them what the value is. And once we get to a point, and maybe it's app number 12 or 13, where it's like, okay, we can go back to those leaders and say, look, with just these top 12 apps, here's the value. We've already exceeded the ROI. And they're kind of like, oh, okay.
yeah.
That the challenge is addressed that way.
Yeah, that ROI discussion is tough because it's a similar question like, okay, what's the ROI of Excel in your organization?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If we took it out, like what would happen? Like, well, the company
And
wouldn't
and
function.
one and I always harp on it too. It's like, okay, yes, we obviously dollars is important, right?
Mhm.
We'll talk about the dollars, but let's also consider the fact that now we have data in a structured format that is accessible, right? We can
Yeah.
get to this data via API.
Mhm.
We want to all talk about big data. The stuff that was coming in an Outlook message and was being managed through Outlook, emails,
Yep.
that was never accessible to any of our data modeling. Now it's in a structured data store that we can
Mhm.
use. Think about the employee experience, right? You
Yep.
used to be paying somebody to sit there and open up a PDF and manually type values from that into another system.
Mhm.
Now that person doesn't have to do that, right? They're happier at their job. They're more engaged. They're spending time on higher value work, right? So those are other two areas that we shouldn't ever lose sight of either when it comes to citizen development. Is like it's not just a dollars and cents ROI; it's also an employee and a data quality and availability discussion.
Yeah, and totally. And someone like that you're working with, if they go to a competitor and they don't have a platform like that, they will like lose their mind because it's like, how am I
Yeah,
supposed to get my work done? Like you asked me to go
yeah,
backwards to use Excel or use email for this, it's gonna be tough.
yeah, yeah. Like to your point, it'd be like taking away Excel at that point. Oh, this is miserable.
Yeah, it's like here's your graph paper. Go try to work
Exactly.
with something.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Blake, it's been so great to talk to you. I feel like the work that you're doing is fun. It's exciting to see what's going on. Anything you'd like to share with us at the end here, just to encourage other companies as they're considering a citizen development journey?
So I mentioned at the beginning, right? 4 years ago, I was skeptical about kind of low code and citizen development as a concept, and 4 years on now, my tune has completely changed. I think there are very valid concerns, right? And there are things that any company looking to get started and really dive in on citizen development needs to consider beforehand and address or design some controls that you want to put in place so that you're not trying to play catch up. That said, the low code platforms, the major ones, if you look at the reports that are coming out from consulting companies that like to do their, I don't know if I can say the name, but their quadrants
Mhm.
of where they all fall, right? If you pick one that is fairly mature, you're going to have those controls. And then it's a matter of layering on any sort of company specific stuff. But I would say don't there needs to be a sort of a broad perspective change around the potential and the value of citizen development
Mhm.
using low code. And yeah, you may not get a citizen developer who's going to come build the next ERP, but you can, it's savings by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a huge, big bang, massive enterprise application system built on low code to find value from it. And you get that employee experience benefit. So there's definitely savings out there if you're concerned from an ROI perspective. From a security perspective, you're getting a lot of low code platform controls being rolled out as part of the platforms now, would make it a lot easier. And then don't lose sight either of, at least for us, part of the reason why we leaned in on citizen development was that our IT teams are really they're stressed, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of work for the central teams to do, and so this was a way to take some of the pressure off of central IT teams and say, hey, accounting team, hey, engineering team, we're not going to have time to get to your use case and what you want us to build, but here
Yeah.
you go. Here's the tools so that you can build it yourselves.
Yeah.
So it takes that stress off of both,
Yeah.
and there's obviously tremendous value in that.
Yeah. I
The
love that.
only the only thing I will say to always to be clear on as well, and I'm ranting here. I'm not ranting. I'm preaching a little bit, but from a citizen developer perspective, also be cognizant of that fact that central IT teams are stressed. One of the hardest things that we've dealt with in recent years is citizen developers will build these apps and then they'll say, "Hey, IT, I need you to support this," and they'll try to throw it
Mm,
over the fence at IT.
yeah.
And that kind of goes against the whole concept, right? You have these tools so that you can build it and you can support it. So it's not a matter of we need citizen developers to build things to then throw over at IT to take on. IT is trying to tread water with what they have. Don't
Yeah.
come over and hand them a baby to hold
Yep.
above their head. You know,
Yep.
it won't work out well. So to any citizen developers, I would just say always keep that in mind, and you'll have a friend in the IT organization that if you build it, it's your baby. You support it and
Yep.
make plans accordingly.
And I think that's great. And I think people like you who are kind of sitting in the middle and translating between the two, you're able to kind of build empathy on both sides and help people to understand, like help the IT team see like these apps were never going to be built. Like, but look, they're out there, they're doing it, but then also you're showing the business users, hey, these are the battles that have been going on for the last 20, 30 years in terms of building up security, building up
Yeah,
the authority behind it, and showing that these are real things we need to take seriously. I think that
yeah.
just educates everyone better.
Yeah, people understand why. There's usually not an issue. It's
Yeah.
just where sometimes it's, why can't I do this, right? And it's a valid question, and we need to explain why
Yeah.
in regular terms.
Yeah, it's great. Well, Blank, really appreciate you being on the show. It's been great to chat with you. We look forward to checking in with you again later on.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil.